Gazing upon our world from a distance, it appears peaceful and calm. But the reality is far different. The repercussions of climate change are approaching us all, and we all contribute to this impact. By 2050, projections indicate that over 3 billion people will reside in various urban centers in the Asia-Pacific region alone. Urban activities are a key contributor to climate change. Cities are responsible for 75% of global CO2 emissions, with transport and buildings among the most significant contributors. And since 2012, the Asia-Pacific region has collectively been responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions yearly. The repercussions of climate change are imminent and befalling us all. Several Asian countries are among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, with the Philippines ranked the 4th, India ranked the 7th, and Thailand ranked the 9th. It's time to act, and we have a joint responsibility to address climate change through urban development planning and design guided by climate data. That's where Urban Act comes in. Urban Act, or the Integrated Urban Climate Action for Low Carbon and Resilient Cities project, is a regional project that aims to support the transformation towards low carbon and resilient urban development and contribute to implementing each partner country's nationally determined contributions and the Sustainable Development Goals. Funded by the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, or BMWK, Urban Act is implemented in 5 partner countries: China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand, with a duration spanning 5 years from 2022 to 2027. We aim to achieve 4 critical outputs. These outputs include improving the institutional environment for climate-sensitive urban development, using evidence-based, inclusive, climate-sensitive, spatial and urban planning, identifying project concepts for urban climate action investment, and enhancing knowledge through regional networking, exchange, and learning. Our collaborative partnership comprises the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit GmbH, or GIZ, as a project leader, and the international partners consisting of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, or UCLG ASPAC, the University of Stuttgart, and TU Dortmund University, and national partners in each of the project countries. To promote and showcase a sustainable integration of climate change into urban development, Urban Act implements its support in 14 pilot cities across the 5 countries, recognizing the unique context of the partner countries and aiming to improve the country's specific policies and regulatory frameworks. Furthermore, we engage in joint operations with the Indonesia-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, or IMTGT, implementing initiatives in 6 cities within the IMTGT sub-region. We are all standing on the edge, and every decision and action we take today will shape our future for generations to come. It is not just a choice, it's a collective responsibility that falls on each of our shoulders. It's time for us to unite and journey towards low-carbon, resilient urban development. Join us in the Urban Act, Joint Action for Climate-Friendly and Resilient Cities. We are stronger if we are together.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sang-Min Nam. I am Director of Environmental Development Division of ESCAP. Welcome to this Climate Conscious City Urban Act webinar series. As you have seen, the title of today's webinar is What COP30 Means for Cities and Climate Action. those who have followed up on COP30, you have seen that the this COP was really highlighting the importance of implementation. So the outcome document, which is entitled Uniting Humanity in Global Mobilization Against Climate Change, it focuses on two major issues. One is from negotiation to implementation, and accelerating implementation, solidarity, and international cooperation. So, so in this connection, cities, we all know that this is a really major ground for climate action, and cities can also innovate solutions and scale up at the national and regional and global levels. And during last few COPs, we have seen increasing initiatives on cities. Like Dubai COP28, we had the first local climate action summit, and it launched the coalition for high ambition multi-level governance, which is called also CHAMP. And then last COP in Baku also launched this Baku Continuity Coalition for Urban Climate Action. And from the beginning, like here we have ECLE, so cities and municipal government, municipalities, they were really key actors in UNFCCC processes and COP processes. And in that regard, so while we are today, we will present key outcomes of COP30. We will highlight what are the implications of those outcomes for cities and local government. So this webinar series, you have just watched the video about this Urban Act project. And then under this project, this webinar aims to increase understanding and knowledge of your knowledge on integrated climate action, for especially for cities, and also bring us together and raise our awareness on key topics, innovations. And then through this, we have been, showcasing our best practice and facilitating learnings and support our own innovation. Next slide, please. And maybe maybe this is note for you. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the material after this. So all previous webinars are available on this website, and also all the participants are welcome to use the chat box to interact with the speakers and also raise any questions. And also at the end of a webinar, you will be invited to complete a short feedback survey. Please feel free share your feedback to this survey, and you can see this guidance on how you participate in this webinar. Next slide. I have already introduced. Move on. So we have two speakers today. First, Wei Xuan Ng, who is the Economic Affairs Office and our Transport Division, leading our low carbon mobility work of ESCAP. And Wei Xuan she was the only participant from ESCAP attending COP30. And so Wei Xuan, while she's working in this transport division, she will present not only the overall outcome not only the transport related outcomes, but overall outcomes of COP30 and then their implication for cities and transport sector. So let me first invite Wei Xuan to deliver her presentation.
Thank you very much, Sungmin, for the introduction. And it is my pleasure to be here today to share some key outcomes from COP30, as well as the linkages between cities and transport. Next slide, please. And so I'm sure all of you are aware that COP30 actually marks the 10th year since the Paris Agreement was signed. And so in that sense, we have in fact been in this process for a decade. And based on a publication that ESCAP has launched recently, it has also been indicated that in 2024, it was the first year when global mean near surface temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees, which means we have not been able to advance the goals of the Paris Agreement, unfortunately, and we do need more ambitious action as well as implementation plans moving forward. COP30 was also a very interesting year because it marks the year when countries need to submit their updated NDCs, which many of you may be aware that the NDCs is the core of the Paris Agreement, and it has a 5-year cycle. And so this has been quite encouraging in the sense that we have seen many countries submit their NDCs 3.0, which have actually been based on the first global stocktake that was concluded in 2023. And so on this slide, you'll see that there are some guiding principles in terms of how we viewed NDCs should be developed and the kind of targets should be included, as well as the sectors and categories that will need to be covered. And of course, NDCs should ideally be aligned with long-term low emission strategies and also to strengthen national action to not just develop, but also implement NDCs. Next slide, please. So here are some of the key outcomes of COP30. You'll see that 2 of the main outcomes are relevant to finance. So I think it was a very good outcome that we've made some progress in terms of adaptation finance. There is a commitment to triple adaptation finance by 2035 to $120 billion. And there are also some new initiatives that were launched, such as the Blend Mission to 1.5 and the Global Implementation Accelerator. And this is really the initiatives that can help support the implementation of the NDCs that we have seen countries submit. And we do expect more countries to actually submit the NDCs over the next few weeks as well, or in the coming months. And in addition to the NDCs, there will also be support through these 2 initiatives on the development of national climate action plans and adaptation plans. So this has been institutionalized as within these 2 new initiatives. So this is quite a positive outcome from COP30. Another outcome is relevant to the just transition mechanism. And so this is also I think one of the few COPs that have placed a huge focus on just transition. And in fact, a just transition mechanism was established, and there is more and more recognition of the need for equitable transitions away from fossil fuels, so a just and inclusive transition to a low carbon or a zero carbon future. And the 4th point here is, once again, on finance. So in addition to the tripling of adaptation finance, there was also a new commitment that came out from the negotiations at COP, which is to mobilize finance for climate action of at least $1.3 trillion per year by 2035. And so this has naturally created a lot of excitement across all sectors at COP, and to really create additional action to really understand how to mobilize such finance, which will be required to transition each sector to a more sustainable and low carbon future. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, there were also two outcomes that were anticipated, but did not happen. So the first is a fossil fuel roadmap. So there were a lot of initial discussions and support for the development of a formal roadmap that could help countries phase out fossil fuels. And the second outcome that we were hoping to see was also more ambitious targets in the NDCs. So despite over 119 countries submitting new NDCs, we have observed that many of these commitments collectively have not been able to reach a global warming level to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So I think this shows that countries still need to be a little more ambitious and also to work with more stakeholders to ensure that we could actually meet our climate targets. In addition, there are two new roadmaps that were announced by the COP30 president to be developed outside of the COP, the official and formal COP process. And these two roadmaps are relevant to deforestation. And I think because of the roadmap, the formal roadmap that was not developed, there is now an initiative and a commitment to develop this roadmap to transition away from fossil fuels outside of the official COP process. And once again, there is a lot of attention on how to transition in a just and inclusive manner and to ensure that no one will be left behind. Next slide, please. So what I've just shared can be categorized within negotiations, some of the official negotiations that have come out of COP30. But I also just want to highlight that, in fact, there are multiple variables to define the success for COP30. And I'm going to share a little more insights on the action agenda. So as you can see here on this slide, action agenda is actually one of the four key pillars that the COP30 presidency has identified to determine the success of this event. And all of these four pillars have been introduced to reinforce multilateralism and to also connect climate to actual action on the ground, which I think will be very much relevant to a lot of the cities-related initiatives and action that many of us are already implementing. And the ultimate goal of all of the four pillars is essentially to accelerate the implementation of the Paris Agreement and to, of course, advance the goals of the Paris Agreement. Next slide, please. And so what exactly is the action agenda? So the action agenda is not a new concept. It has actually been initiated right after COP21. So in fact, the Moroccan presidency launched an initiative called the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action that actually identified 7 different sectors or thematic areas where stakeholders and not just countries, but different stakeholders, including subnational governments and stakeholders from all sectors can actually come together and design activities and identify initiatives and solutions that are already on the ground. And so what we saw this year is essentially an evolution of this Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. And it has actually expanded to a lot more sectors, which I think is a very positive sign because we're actually being a lot more inclusive in this process. And this is also aligned with the fact that the UNFCCC at that time has recognized that it is no longer sufficient to rely on transport ministries or national governments to advance the goals of the Paris Agreement, that we do need more support. In fact, we need everyone, every sector, every levels of government to be part of this process. And this was how this whole global climate action agenda was set up almost 10 years ago. And so this year, we actually saw a continuation of the action agenda and also the expansion of thematic days. And so on this slide, you'll see that there are 6 thematic axes, and each of these thematic axes had their own thematic days, a 2-day focus on each of these 6 axes. And this is also based on a trend or a phenomena that was started by the Chilean COP presidency back in COP25. And it's actually very encouraging to all of us working in this field that, in fact, every COP presidency since then has followed this trend and has created thematic days, which are essentially platforms for different stakeholders to take part in the COP policy or events that we're actually seeing today. And in fact, each day or each thematic day has also connected negotiations with real-world impact. And one of the most interesting fact about this whole agenda is that regardless of the outcomes of the official negotiations, we know that the stakeholders involved in every one of these axes or action agenda will continue to deliver. And I think this has created a lot of positive momentum to ensure that there will be consistency moving forward. And so this year, there were almost 350 climate action agenda events. All of them were aimed at turning negotiations or policies into action. All of them highlighted actual actions and solutions that are already in place on the ground. And many of you may have participated in some of these events. Many of these events were also led by representatives of organizations working on cities and human settlements. So I think this is a very positive trend moving forward. And of course, because of all the thematic days, the COP presidency has managed to bring in multi-stakeholders across all sectors and across different levels of governments. Next slide, please. And so, as you may have seen in the previous slide, that was an axis 4, focusing on cities, building resilience for cities, infrastructure, and water. So unlike previous COPs where we've had some of the themes, some of the thematic days, and some of the priority areas, the COP30 presidency has also further developed 30 key objectives as part of the global climate action agenda. And so you can see here under axis 4, the axis that is relevant to cities, there are in fact 5 different key objectives that fall under this specific axis, which I will share a little more insights on. And of course, for transport, there are some overlapping objectives across different axes, mainly in axis 1 and also in axis 4, focusing on urban transport. Next slide, please. And so all the different solutions, in fact, there were 30 cities related, almost 30 cities related solutions announced or delivered at COP30. So this is something that you can read about. I've included a link on this slide, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I just want to highlight that there is one very specific solution, which I think is very relevant to today's webinar and our discussion, which is on multi-level climate governance. I think this really reflects all the hard work that the community working on cities and human settlements has achieved over the past few years, in fact, over the past decade or more. And it really accumulated to this multi-level, multi-sectoral, and participatory governance model that has been launched at COP30. And so, of course, this builds upon the Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships, CHAMP, that was launched at COP28. And in addition to that, there are also specific solutions that have been focused on integrating some of the multi-level structures into 100 NDCs. And also we have seen a very positive trend that 80% of the NDCs currently submitted have specifically mentioned subnational governments. And this is a huge increase, and almost 20% increase over the previous cycle of the NDC's submission process. And in addition, there are also platforms that have been implemented focusing on finance. And I think this is good news for different stakeholders, because there is a real commitment to really mobilize finance to support cities and to support different sectors on a city level to really help mobilize more resources and to implement the NDCs or any climate action that has been developed. Next slide, please. And so I'm going to share some implications for the transport sector. So I know that the transport sector is integrated as part of cities development and, of course, cities related climate action. And the sector as a whole has seen some of these four main implications due to the decisions made at COP30. So first and foremost, I think it was a very good sign that we saw the first ever transport pavilion at COP in Belém this year. So this was the first ever pavilion on transport that really gave the transport community a platform and a space to share new ideas, solutions, actions, and specific targets for the way forward. There were, in fact, about 90 transport events at COP30, which was also quite a significant number. And this has allowed the sector to bring in more stakeholders and to focus on different topics within the transport sector. And we're also seeing more and more initiatives on hard-to-abate transport sectors. So there are three key hard-to-abate transport sectors, and these are aviation, maritime, and road freight transport. So long distance road transport, essentially trucks. So we're also seeing more and more discussions and initiatives on these three hard-to-abate transport sectors, which is also a very positive sign. There was also a declaration that was being made at COP30 related to low emission transport. So this was led by the Chilean Ministry of Transport, where they have mobilized 11 countries to endorse this declaration focusing on resilient and low carbon transport systems. And the third implication is on climate finance gaps and investment push. So within the transport sector, there is a growing recognition that the sector needs more funding and finance in order to decarbonize. And in fact, it has been estimated that about 2.7 trillion US dollars annually will need to be allocated to this sector in order for it to fully decarbonize by 2050. And this number is in fact 7 times higher than the current investment level. So I think there is a lot more to do to identify financing sources and to also develop sustainable financing mechanisms for transport. The fourth point here is to integrate transport into NDCs and national plans. And this is also something that we've seen in the NDCs that have been submitted so far. Next slide, please. And so about 20 transport-related solutions were announced or developed at COP30. So I will just highlight 2 main plans, which are most relevant to our city's discussion today. And these are relevant to urban infrastructure and mobility plans. And so the first is to scale up public transport and sustainable transport. And the second is to implement resilient and adaptive transport infrastructure. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. And so just some thoughts on moving forward. One of the key highlights, I think, of this year is that there has been a launch, in fact, yesterday, of a implementation plan of the UN Decade of Sustainable Transport, which will start next year. And so all the outputs that we have seen at COP30 has actually set a stage for the transition for transport that will be aligned with this new UN decade of sustainable transport. And of course, we do need large-scale investment, both global and regional cooperation, cross-sectoral cooperation as well, and appropriate regulations. So thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to our discussion later.
Thank you. Thank you, Wei Xuan, for this comprehensive presentation. Hey, hello, participants. So we have participants from Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Cambodia, China, Turkey, India, Pakistan, and of course from Thailand here. And also I see participants from Nigeria, South Africa, and Madagascar. So please feel free to put your question in the chat box. And while I'm waiting for question in the chat box, let me give just one question to Wei Xuan. So Wei Xuan, so you really highlighted the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement and for them really to create a positive momentum and for continuing our action, also accelerating and scaling up our action, regardless of the outcome from the negotiation process. Yeah. And so also you highlighted that this large number of transport events, 90 events, and then 20 transport sector solution announced at the COP. And certainly it has a quite important implication for Asia Pacific, since we are still experiencing rapid urbanization and also increase of this still expanding the transport system. So what would be your understanding, your interpretation of these outcomes from not only COP30, also from latest COPs for decarbonizing our transport sector in Asia Pacific, during your experience, from your experience?
Thank you, Simon, for the question. So, for countries in Asia and the Pacific, I think there are definitely different transport challenges. And based on our work with our member states, across all the different sub-regions, we've also seen different priorities and challenges. But in terms of how COP has shaped their action agenda, I think COP has definitely presented a framework, a global framework that could also be applied on a regional level. And for instance, many of our seats countries have been very engaged with the maritime dialogues in terms of decarbonizing the maritime sector and also aligning their own economic development targets with the decarbonization process. And for Asian Pacific, and especially for countries that are still developing, I think the goal is to really not compromise economic development, and to really ensure that transport can still enable economic growth, but in a more sustainable way. But to also ensure that the climate targets will be met through more innovative transport solutions, which we're already seeing in many cities in Asia and the Pacific. So this could be electrification of two-wheelers, of three-wheelers. It could also be the use of app-based mobility services with different application of technologies that could enable more efficient, more sustainable, and resilient transport systems within Asia and Pacific.
Thank you. Our participants also indicating that they are. Thank you for informing us of your location. Also, but please feel free to share your question in the chat box. Here, Wei Xuan highlighted, amongst the various points that she highlighted here, is six thematic action agenda. So the axis 4 is about resilience of cities. And then under this, there are multiple specific actions. The first point is about the multi-level governance. So our next speaker, Mr. Yunus Arikin, Arikan, who is head of ECLA, he would be the best person to connect this, bring this into his presentation, which will focus on the role of a local government and municipal authorities. Yunus, floor is yours.
Thank you, Sangbin, for the kind introduction, and thank you to Urban Act partners for their hard work in their project, and also inviting us, ICLE, as well as LGMA, into this debate. I enjoyed in the previous years also, immediately after the conclusion of COPs, we had the chance to discuss this. Just yesterday, we had our LGMA debrief. So this presentation is based on that mainly. Of course, during my presentation, I will try to dig a bit more detail to your region as well as to the global processes, but we can also come to this in the Q&A part as well. And once again, congratulations for your continued emphasis on multi-level collaboration and linking the local agenda to global processes. Exactly as my presentation was focusing on that. And in fact, I was very delighted to speak after my dear colleague, Wei Xin, because she made my job much, much more easy. And together with her, we have been in this, let's say, partners in crime on all these efforts for years and years, if not decades, on action agenda. And the transport and local and regional governments have always been good collaborators, because together they can be even better because of the relevance to the transport sector, to the climate resilient and low carbon cities as well, and regions overall. So if you can take to the next slide. In our preparation, so ICLE is a global network, and we have been acting as the coordinator or the focal point of all the networks. So I will try to be specific as much as possible, because in the past years you have heard about us. So what was the essence of this year was that it would be the success of Belém depends on work at home. And that was our most important priority, because the NDCs are not designed at the COPs. It is at the national level. And as Wei mentioned, this year's particular is that the end of the Paris Agreement's first decade. And these NDCs, this year's national climate plans, were the ones that are the most compatible with the spirit of the Paris Agreement. And we wanted to make sure that this is reflected. And therefore, we encourage most of our partners, most of their capacities and time to dedicate at the national level. We will touch upon it again. And as you heard from Wei, we delivered the result. I mean, the increase of the urban components, the increase of subnational engagement is something that we're proud. Yes, overall ambition is little less, sorry. And there are still some parties who have not submitted, including in your region. But I think the overall, the ones that were submitted are much more closer to the real implementation, because they were also very close with local and regional governments. We will, of course, go for the discussion about what we achieved in Belém. And beyond Belém is equally important of what we are discussing, especially the COP30 presidency, Ambassador Dalago, and the whole Brazilian delegation were very clear that this is not the end of the game, but just on the ground, they want to continue further. And that is what encourages us. That is one of the reasons why we were so much closely with working with the presidency, because it's a process. You cannot expect everything to be solved out in one event. Let's go to the next slide. I will have two slides, which is a bird's eye view of how we have participated and what we achieved. There will be some, excuse me, slides which show some moments and some links. And my last two slides is also a wrap up and forward-looking thinking. So it was not easy. So if we say that there's three basic things about the framing conditions, how COP30 presidents have handled this, and how LGMA, we as networks, have approached to this. Framing conditions was not easy. As we said, the national ambitions were weaker, and even there was a backslide. Even from the countries that used to be ambitious in climate action, we all aware that the realities are much more different than even 2 years ago or so. Another contentious issue was that the reality was that, especially the official development assistance from the global north to south was shrinking. And despite there was a commitment for $1.3 trillion, there was not a clear indication that this will be fulfilled in time and it will be reaching its goal. So there was a question of trust, and there was a question of the disbelief that how we will go collectively on this processes. And then, of course, the geopolitics. There is an attack on multilateralism. There is weakening global institutions. There is much more regional and national a rise of the international and regional processes, which is not easy when you are talking at this global space. How did COP30 presidents react to that? First of all, let's remember we were in Brazil. Brazil is well known for the spirit of the Earth Summit, the Sustainable Development Agenda that they have launched to the world and offered to the world. They also hosted Rio Plus 20 in 2012. So this is the third time Brazil is in the game. As you all know, countries, although there are UN procedures, the host countries always influence the outcomes through all the tools they have in mind and in their hands. And Brazil come to this process really as a country that is mobilized all its resources. They really wanted to revive the spirit of Earth Summit, and especially the people-based diplomacy, bringing it to the heart of Amazon, bringing it to the local communities, bringing it to the local regional governments. It was impressive, and connecting the action agenda to the global stocktake is again making sure that our diplomatic achievements are speaking to the real lives of the people. Again, Brazil is an important global south country. They are a member of the BRICS. Obviously, they have a duty to make sure their friends and brothers and sisters in the global south are heard. And in fact, if you look at the main outcomes, you can feel that it's global south primarily relatively much more happy because some issues like trade, some issues like adaptation finance are all addressed in the most appropriate way. And the just transition was something that G7 and China has endorsed in the last couple of months before COP30. So, of course, not every COP can sort out everything, but as you heard, we'll just hear again that Brazil is doing also even the things that were not adopted there. So for us, LGMA, we try to be strategic. You heard from Wei that we have been working on action agenda. We wanted to advance into a systematic, integrated approach to multi-level and urban in the NFC system. We were diverse. We were able to convene our leaders from across the world at the COP30 Local Leaders Forum, which include what they want from this process. And us, as the networks, we help them to formulate how these can be translated into the negotiations. And then there was the Ministerial of Urbanization and Ministers, which are responding from their ministerial's part of it. And we also had a high-level engagement for years, in the last couple of years, which was not the case. UN Secretary General, COP30 President, President Lula have addressed. You can watch the opening plenary. André Dalago's first sentence was that here in Brazil, we have governors and mayors here. President Lula met twice with our leaders, so that was a fantastic leadership from Brazil. Next, let me come to what we achieved. First of all, there are negotiated outcomes, there are NDCs on the table, and there are still work done by us. In terms of negotiated outcomes, there are direct references in the Muchirao text. It says, cities and other subnational governments in multi-level climate action. It's interesting that even one word, which is consists of two letters in multi-level climate action, it combines the Paris Agreement text and the Dubai text. It has huge implications. It may be small, but it is very valuable for us. Of course, we were asking for more, but we can comfortably build on that. There are governance, multi-level governance and mitigation and adaptation indicators have human settlements references. There are indirect outcomes. Just transition is something that cannot be achieved without local and regional governments. Gender plan is speaking to our heart. And action agenda. These future processes are not anymore national governments, but it is all stakeholders on board. And implicit, the president's roadmaps. When it comes to NDCs, The good news is that, as Wei mentioned, one of the very impressive accelerating solutions is on multi-level action from Activation Group 11, which we as ICLE and LGM has been proudly partnering. But the good news is that project is not just for only champ endorsers, but it also will aim to reach the non-champ endorsers, and that's particularly the case for Asia, because even in this partnership, among these 5 countries that you are working, Philippines is the only one who has endorsed champ. But there are so many things going on in other countries, China, India, Thailand, that you have addressed. They are not endorsers of champ, but they would be also engaged through this process, which is a good signal from Brazil, and we were very encouraging this to go forward. UN Habitat analysis is deep into that. It's an accelerating of urban components, and we have also UNFCCC, all documents in one-stop shop, so we can build on it. And we will continue with our bottom-up leadership. And maybe I go because Wei nicely refers to counter platforms. I want to focus on, in my next slide, on the town hall COPs that ICLE has worked a lot. If you go to the next slide. Sorry, this is the outcome statement of our leaders. The order of the slides probably are a bit different. Oh, I now realize that I didn't include the town hall COP slides in my presentation. It will be important to note that the preparation phase in the Pacific, Asia Pacific, we had special events with ASEAN, Malaysia, and we also had a very interesting event of town hall COPs in India. And these are very, very powerful messages because they already have addressed that we want to engage local and regional governments in both national and global processes. I will not go too much on those things. These are the outcome statement. We can hope. This is the one endorsed by the leaders. This is our negotiation documents endorsed by networks. I'm very happy that UCLG ASPAC are among the 50 plus networks across the world who have endorsed these documents. It is really providing us the formulation of how we can feed into the text. And this year, in addition to our position, we had specific guidance or thematic actions, but also we had made a compendium of national mobilization strategies, and this was really making us relevant to our process. Next slide. As I said, the 11th of November, UN Habitat is particularly excited. Those who are familiar, our dear friend Leah, and of course all her superiors and partners. There's SDG 11 on the 11th of November, 11/11. There was a fantastic day. It was a massive mobilization. It has produced a ministerial summary. It contained a number of proposals, both to UN Habitat community, but also to the UNFCCC. And this was one of the powerful tools. As we said, we have 3 directions. The political leaders, the networks, and the ministers are all aligning or converging to the same goal, that we have to elevate multi-level and urban, which are the 2 sides of the same coin, but slightly different, to be increased in the climate action. Next slide. If you go to the next slide. In the next slide, actually, you will see some scenes, exactly those press conferences and interactions, which you can all find in our citiesandregions.org in our homepage for COP30 as well, for the LGMA homepage. This is a scene that you can see. Wei was really proud to say that the first ever slow cat and transport pavilion was there. We were very happy to engage as a partner to this, and it was very good introduction. But we had been hosting these hubs or pavilions for years, and every year we are increasing our capacities. This time, again, it was a collaboration between ICLE and UN Habitat, but Minister of Cities was played a key role. And let's remember, climate COPs are traditionally agenda of ministers of environment or foreign affairs, or sometimes in energy. Here, this COP, particularly Minister of Cities of Brazil, with their spirit of climate federalism, were particularly very happy to be proudly partner of this process. You can see in our pavilion, you can see the sketch of an urban, let's say, profile, which was next slide. It was even impressive because we have worked together with an urban community, an urban corner. We had the resilience community, the water community, ICLE, and the buildings and cooling pavilions as well. Over these years, we had numerous leaders. Of course, majority of political leaders were in Rio at the Leaders Forum, but in Belém, We had also a good diversity of leaders. It was logistically challenging, and I can imagine the participation of the South Asian colleagues or Asian colleagues were relatively less, but still we had a good voice and representation. I was particularly happy, for example, ICLEI's Deputy Secretary General and the Asia Regional Coordinator, Mani Kumar, and many of our colleagues were there as well to elevate our voice. So these daily briefings, daily video caps, you can all reach to this through our mailing list. And we have also seen, as you have heard, there's a fantastic recognition of our work at the global media. This shows that we are getting much more part of the climate implementation space, which is exactly the spirit of Brazil. Next slide, please. I'm getting, as you said, as we said.
Also, perhaps we have quite many questions. Can
Okay,
you
I'm just
summarize? Yeah,
concluding.
yeah.
I'm just concluding. If you go to the next slide, uh, this is actually my probably my last slide as far as I remember. We have a huge calendar in the year. It will be the 3 Rio conventions, the review of the new urban agenda, and there will be several interesting dialogue between Turkey and Australia. It will be an interesting space also in the political level because in the next 3 years, most of these presidencies will be in the hands of the global south, including India, potentially the COP host for 33 in 2028. Whereas G20 and G7 leadership will be the US, France, and UK. And in all of these, we will also have to discuss about the UN governance. The multi-level issue cannot be sorted out only at the UNFCCC. We're very happy that UN Secretary General is combining UNEP and UNFCCC to make this bridge between these efforts. So maybe then I can come back with the question and answer session as well. And thanks for your patience. Thanks a lot, Sangming, for your moderation and support.
Thank you, Yunus. Your last slide is directly related to questions here.
Okay.
Can you see the questions in Q&A chat box? The last question is related on climate governance and local governments.
Okay, let me. I was seeing the chat box. Now
Go to at the bottom, see the Q&A box. Yeah. Open it and then look at the last question.
Okay. If you come back to then the last slide that I had, if possible, Sangmin. Indeed, yeah, there's the one with the chart. So indeed, we are envisaging a 2 years process from Belém to Addis. This would be a process where Addis is important because it will be the time for COP hosted in Africa. And Africa is also the moment where the IPCC special report on cities will be concluded in March. We all know IPCC is the backbone of any political decision in the UNFCCC for years. But there is, over the last couple of years, not all the IPCC results are making their ways to the UNFCCC decisions. So having a special report on cities, which is once in a generation possibility, and this mission from Belém, where we have said that multi-level action is becoming stronger, I think now it's time for us to think about it. We believe UNFCCC has to come up with a standalone, an integrated, systematic approach to focus on cities, mitigation, adaptation, finance, and this will help UNFCCC getting closer to the real lives of people. So we have to work a long way, at least a 2 years framework, but we are confident with the leadership that we are currently having and the endorsement from all the partners, we will be able to get this soon.
Thank you. Let me also invite Wei Xuan. So now we have 14 questions here, and feel free to identify question related to your expertise and your work. And if you could make a short response to the question, that would be great.
Thank you, Samin. So I have tried to respond to 2 transport-related questions in the chat, in the Q&A section, but maybe I can just further elaborate on it because I think there are some other questions relevant to finance, and perhaps what we're seeing in the transport sector will also apply to other sectors as well. So there are definitely a lot of initiatives and commitments that we're seeing right now to ensure that countries or cities will be able to access the finance available for this transition. And so there are more and more multilateral development banks that are committed to make this happen. We're also seeing countries contributing to climate funds, and the volume of such grants are actually quite substantive. And of course, for multilateral development banks, they are also looking at loans that may appeal to certain cities and countries. And that was a very specific question on resilient transport, but I also want to highlight that there is also a commitment to mobilize finance for climate mitigation as well. So both adaptation and mitigation. And so as I have mentioned in my presentation, we're seeing a tripling of adaptation financing up to $120 billion, and also the pledge to mobilize $1.3 trillion per year. And that is a scale that I don't think we have seen before. And even though these are still at the commitment level, we're already seeing climate finance or climate grants and climate finance being more utilized by different sectors. So an example could be the Mitigation Action Facility, or even IKI, the International Climate Initiative. And these are all supported by different countries. And I do believe that we will see more accessibility or more accessible finance that will go across different sectors, including transport.
Thank you. Perhaps in view of time, let me also provide my own answer to some of the questions. I'm currently this co-chair of a UN issue-based coalition for raising climate ambitions. So here there is question about the $1.3 trillion, whether this is additional. No, it is 1.3 trillion is for both from developing country, from both official and private sector. So if you look at the global landscape of climate finance, currently we have more than now 1 trillion from finance from both public and private and developing country. And the question on health in COP, in fact, the last COP also had a really thematic discussion on health. So, and there was question whether ESCAP could create a data system for monitoring, supporting implementation. Yes, so ESCAP and UNEP and this UN entities are jointly reviewing this NDC target and implementation annually. So we have a annual review of climate ambition available on website from 2021. And so certainly we will further improve this monitoring and review. And the low carbon cities, you know, we are still experiencing rapid urbanization. So the infrastructure that we are building today, urban infrastructure we are creating today, will shape our emission, our energy use for next 40, 50 years. So in that regard, how to connect this ongoing investment and infrastructure with this low carbon element, that would be critical. And there is increasing resources for that. So, and then there is also question on the role of private sector in urban transport. I guess this was also answered by Wei Xuan. You know, private sector is a really key enabler driver of low decarbonizing urban transport. And Yunus, would you see any other question that you wish to respond?
Thank you, Sangmin. give me the opportunity to respond into the very good questions on the chat box, also on the Q&A box. A couple of questions came from, I think, Dr. Rakesh about the local action changing the climate space. This was very, very valuable because indeed, and there was some questions, for example, why people are changing, the backtracking, especially in the global north, living in the country like Germany and Bonn. Indeed, the current civilization that we are living in, the, let's say, the developed countries, is based on fossil fuels and consumption based communities, and that's what is what has to be changed. And of course, the new emerging economies in the global south, in be it in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, the idea is that they don't repeat this mistake when they are developing their neo cities, new industrial plans, so that they switch to the new technologies, new policies that is available. And this change is not easy, especially in well-settled economies. Shifting, if you are just, your city is designed for private owned cars and less public transport, introducing low carbon transport, be it public buses, be it active mobility, is reacting with certain resistance. And the art of the leaders, be it political, be it technical, be it national, local, it is them to make this change acceptable by the communities. And usually people are uncomfortable to take these changes. We had seen, I believe, Wei, you are aware, the first 1 month car-free zone of ICLEI, is Eco Mobility Project, was in Suwon. At the beginning, there was a huge resistance because 5,000 people were asked not to use cars. They were protesting the mayor in front of the mayor's house. After a well-designed process, that mayor has won the election by a highest margin in Korea, and now he's in the member of parliament of Korea. But this was not the same success in other countries or other cities. There are cities, mayors, who were blamed to be not making this managing the change well, and they didn't get the votes again. So it's a political risk. Therefore, it has to be well managed, and that's why they need partners like networks, like ICLEI or ESCAP, like UN institutions. The other point is that the town hall COPs that we have worked on, connecting climate action all levels, was really the local governments asking their national governments, come and discuss your national climate plan with us, how we can contribute, and going back to their communities saying that, look, what is your demand, so that we can reflect to the local and national politics. This type of inclusive approaches is needed because the daily politics is so much toxic, and it is influenced by so many national and other political drivers, and these are keeping us apart. And making this honest discussion on climate, facing the challenge but facing the opportunity as well, is the right way to go forward. And in that regard, one of the things that was asked, for example, health or new opportunities in Belém, it was a conclusion of the initiative with UNEP and other partners on cooling initiative. Beat the heat is something that was very important. This beginning of this week, we were in Nairobi, UN Environment Assembly. We had Mayor of Turbat from Pakistan, who was saying that 50 days, 50 plus degrees of days in my city is now a normal, and I cannot neither cool my medicines nor run my houses, my cities, my communities. And he was saying that we have to solve this problem because that is for us life and death. There are new partnerships like Cool Coalition, food waste breakthroughs, and these are now have to be reaching to the local level. They should be receiving the money that they need, and that is what we have to fight for. And I think we are on the correct pathway. We just have to accelerate and make sure that all communities, I mean, I see hundreds of people in this discussion, that they go back to their national government saying that, how do you now reflect the outcomes at the local level? And I encourage all your participants to go to your local governments, ask them to convene their town hall COPs next year. The final thing is that these NDCs, the national plans, are presumably prepared every 5 years. So we cannot wait for the next 5 years because it will be too late. That's why having your local town hall, convening this kind of discussions, making these plans reaching to the to the discussions is really something that we need to keep an eye on and make sure everyone is collaborating on that.
Thank you, Yunus. This sounds like excellent concluding remarks for today, encouraging participants' action. So with that, I would like to conclude this webinar series, and thank you also, Wei-Shu and Yunus, for preparing your presentation and sharing your time and thoughts and information. And so with this webinar, we are concluding the series of webinar for 2025. And from in 25 minutes, we are going to have another webinar. It's not part of this series, but we have a webinar on methane reduction, jointly organized by IPU, International Parliamentary Union, and UNEC and ESCAP. And then, so we are also inviting you to share your feedback to this webinar. We would be grateful if you spend a few minutes for sharing your feedback to this, and then this will help you get your certificate for participating in this webinar. And so with that, I would like to conclude this webinar. Thank you very much for your participation. All the best.
Thank you. Have a nice day.